Welcome back to Occupy the Media. Thanks for staying with us. We've had a lot of calls, and I know some people were trying to call during the last segment, but we do want to hear from you. The call is free, 877-575-FSTV. That's 877-575-3788. Are you in favor of a small tax on Wall Street that could raise billions of dollars for the U.S. federal government's coffers? The lines are open. So lots of kids are taking part in all sorts of summer camps, but there's one in Brooklyn that's pretty unique that we want to tell you about. Leaders of the Occupy movement have launched the first ever Occupy Wall Street approved summer camp. So Marcy, tell us about this Occupy Wall Street camp.
Yeah, it's really modeled after the freedom schools of the 60s, and it's really aimed at getting kids more familiar with social movement issues that are really missing from mainstream education nowadays.
So you go to summer camp, get the summer camp experience, but then also learn something about history and social activism. And you actually caught up with Justin Wheatus. He's the founder of this summer camp called the Paul Robeson Freedom School. It's named after the Brooklyn High School. And so let's see what he had to say.
Justin, thanks so much for joining us today. Start by telling us a little bit about the background. How was it that you came to form the Paul Robeson Freedom School?
Well, the Paul Robeson Freedom School really came out of the work of the Paul Robeson High School students. This is a school in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that the city has been targeting for closure for many, many years. The students there are real fighters. They are standing up for public education. They're standing up for their school. And on May 1st of this year, they walked out in protest of those policies and in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street and the call for a general strike for workers. And in response to that, they were all suspended. And out of that came this idea that to continue this struggle after the closure of their school.
Now, what can students learn at the Freedom School? It's an 8-week summer camp, so to speak. What are they being taught there?
The curriculum that we're trying to build together collaboratively is with parents, students, teachers, community members. It's going to be culturally relevant. It's going to be rich in the history of social justice activism, especially in this community, but really across the country. They'll be learning about the original freedom movement and the freedom schools of the 60s that came up during segregation and the Civil Rights Act, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so much of that history that isn't really gone into in depth in the public schools today, that radical history of fighting against injustice and fighting for civil rights and human rights.
Yeah,
and so that'll be a big part of the curriculum, as well as the academics that these young people need and oftentimes aren't getting within their public education setting.
Yeah. Definitely not your typical summer camp. We have just a few minutes, a few seconds, I'm sorry. Talk quickly about the future. Where do you want to see the Freedom School down the line?
Right. So the original Freedom Schools of the 60s were never intended to be permanent institutions because they were meant to fix a very particular problem, which was that young people of color, especially, were not getting an adequate public education. And so the community had to step in and provide that. In the same way today, in so many cities across this country, we're cutting back on public education, on teachers. We're demonizing teachers and their unions. And as a result, young people of color are not getting, in so many places, an adequate public education. And so to serve as an independent alternative model for how public education can be done collaboratively with the community, with the support of the community and parents, we're trying to build this as a model. If it will continue, we don't know. We expect it to be successful, and so we will continue it as long as necessary to show that we can create community schools, locally controlled and progressive in every sense of the word.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That was Justin Wheatus talking about the school he founded, the Paul Robeson Freedom School. And we will be taking all of your calls in a second because I know that we have a lot to talk about. But first, Jonny 5, I wanted to throw this out to you because the Flobots, a lot of people might be familiar with your music, but just like this summer camp there, you as a group have done a lot to really fuse music with activism and actually getting involved with kids. So tell us about what the some of the projects
Sure,
you're working
yeah.
on.
I mean, I think we've always seen music as not just a tool for self-expression, but also a tool for movement building. And I think in the last few years, having the kind of good fortune of being in sort of the national spotlight with our music, we've looked at sort of what are some ways to sort of follow up on that and go more in depth. And right here in Denver, we know there's so many talented young people with so much to say that don't often get asked to tell their stories. And so we've done programming around that with an organization called Flobots.org, a nonprofit that we set up. This is something we had in the works before we kind of were on the national stage or whatever. But right now we're working on a youth media studio in a specific neighborhood in Denver where we think young folks have a lot of stories to tell and we want them to be able to tell that through music. So a youth media
studio, like describe what the vision is for this, because it's pretty unique and pretty cool.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of young people I think who already have art that they're creating. And a lot of times that's what people are passionate about. When you're a high school student, I remember that, the ability to write a rap is one of the things that kind of can be a lifesaver at certain times. So it can really form this sort of cultural safety net. And we want to say to folks, yes, that's important, that's valid, and that matters, and we want you to develop it. At the same time, that can often be your path to academic development, to kind of a larger place of engagement with the world.
So like a rec center where kids can come and walk there and
physically
play music, play art.
Exactly. I mean, we're actually talking literally about a studio in the ground floor of a housing redevelopment project that's underway right now. So we're talking about a place where people from that neighborhood can go physically record music, create media, and also where people from around the city of Denver could then utilize that as a resource. And
Sounds great.
And you're raising money for this project right now, and so people should definitely go and check it out. They're at flobots.org.
Flobots.org, yeah, we'll tell you all about the project.
Involved. Okay, you're watching Occupy the Media, and now it's time to take some more calls from the 99%.
Mic check. Mic check.
Okay, on the line, David from Kansas, who wants to talk about the transaction tax and tariffs. You're on Occupy the Media, David. Hi, David. Can you hear us? You're on Occupy the Media. Okay, looks like we're unable to get David on the line. But Marcy, it sounds like you had something to chime in with about getting kids involved in.
Yeah, I just think it's really incredible. Not just the Paul Robeson High School, but what the Flobots are doing as well to get kids engaged at a younger age. I think it's one of those resources that communities should really look into putting money and resources into, because I think it can just be such a game changer for students, like you said, and arts and music is definitely one of those places where in traditional schools that's kind of what's getting cut when you look at cutbacks. So they need to be supplemented somewhere. And
did that come in mind? You're looking at all the cuts that have been going on to schools where kids can't get that exposure to music.
I mean, that's certainly been a factor. I mean, there's the programming we have right now, often it is arts that's being cut out of their daily curriculum. And while I think there's some kind of systemic solutions to that problem with that mindset, I think oftentimes we can come in there and make sure that at least for that year or the next year that folks do get exposure to music and art.
Okay, well, let's see. We actually have a caller on the line right now. Jerry from Indiana. You're on Occupy the Media. Hi, Jerry. We're not having very much luck with calls. Jerry, you're on Occupy the Media. You want to talk about Mitt Romney and Bain Capital. Okay, another call. I mean, or people are feeling very shy or silent when they.
It could be.
Get
Yeah,
on here.
people clam up. I think. I mean, even just the topic of Mitt Romney and Bain Capital. I think one of the things I've been at least cautiously optimistic about is that there's been talk about Obama kind of saying, well, you know what, with my campaign strategy, I'm not going to be able to go with the Wall Street money, and I'm going to go for money from other communities like the Latino community, from the gay community, and I've heard people talk about that cynically. I think that's a wonderful thing if that indeed is part of the strategy. I'd rather he goes to groups like that. So I don't know if that's what the caller wanted to talk about, but that's my comment.
Maybe it had to do back with the offshore bank accounts that the previous caller had been talking about earlier in the show.
Okay.
Purely speculative.
Yeah, a lot of speculation going on here. Wall Street speculation. That should be the real
call us up. We'll speculate on what you would have talked about.
Real quickly before we wrap up, Jonny 5, the Occupy Wall Street movement and Flobots really, its audience is young people who are politically active. Mm-hmm. What's your take on Occupy Wall Street movement and its future right now?
It's funny. We got the first tweets about Occupy Wall Street the days we were going to the studio, and people saying, can you be there September 17th? We went to the studio September 18th. That movement was such a game changer. It changed the landscape, the political conversation, and it's just been an inspiration to us. And I think as musicians, we sometimes can be there on the streets, sometimes we're there making the music, but we're always inspired by what's happening.
Okay, great. Well, we asked our Facebook friends and Twitter followers, how do you think today's youngsters could benefit from the Occupy-themed summer camp? David says, gives them a chance to know the truth, not what the media or government wants you to know. Carol says, investing in money in banks has proven to fail, but education has always been too big to fail. Get a 401k for your mind. Justin says, any kind of program that increases awareness and participation in political, social processes would be beneficial. Well, that's it for this week. Jonny Five, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And your new album, Circle in the Square, Flobots' new album, comes out August 28th, so we'll be checking that out. And just to remind you, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit organization, which means that we don't take money from corporations and we depend solely on our viewers. So if you like what we're doing here at Occupy the Media, we could really use your support. Help us continue our mission by going to freespeech.org and becoming a member. Thanks for joining us today, and we're going to leave you with the newest video from Jonny Five's band, the Flobots. It's called Circle in the Square, just released today. Check it out, and we will see you next time here on Occupy the Media.